Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. This story begins on a beach somewhere unknown. We then see some guards pick up a young man found on the coast of the seaside town and take him to an old man who has lived there for almost 60 years. The old man asks the man if he's there to kill him, and says he has memories of someone he met many years ago when he saw him. That man's name is Dom, an extractor, a corporate spy who uses experimental military technology to infiltrate the subconscious of his targets and extract information through a shared dream world. The next moment, we see him at dinner with his latest target, the businessman Saito, who listens with interest to Dom and his assistant Arthur's reflections on the possibility of extracting an idea from someone's subconscious, and then leaves, promising to consider their proposal. At that moment, there's a loud noise, and Arthur anxiously looks out the window. It turns out the men are dreaming, and their bodies are sleeping in a completely different place, in a hotel room, and it's there in the streets that the explosions are heard and the riots are happening. But in the dream, the men step out onto the terrace as they continue their conversation. Dom is certain that Sato's secrets are in his safe and intends to retrieve them, and then they notice a woman nearby. Dom talks to her and finds out that they had a relationship in which they even had children, but apparently, the woman left the family later. Dom goes down to the ground floor window and infiltrates Sato's office, where he swaps the envelope in the businessman's safe. At that moment, the lights come on, and Dom finds himself staring down the barrel of Saito and Mel, his ex-wife's gun. It turns out she's playing on his opponent's side. To make matters worse, they've captured Arthur, and Dom has to surrender. Saito knows they're in a dream and demands to know the name of who hired them to do it. Mel reminds them that if you kill someone in a dream, they'll wake up. But now Arthur feels real pain. Mel shoots Arthur in the leg, and then Dom rushes for the gun and shoots Arthur in the head so he'll wake up soon. His partner wakes up in the real world. Dom escapes with the envelope from the safe and reads it, while Saito demands that they stop the thief who's trying to escape from the collapsing building. Meanwhile, Arthur has to use what they call a kick, pushing Dom into the water-filled bathtub to wake him up. Saito then dies with debris falling on him and wakes up. At the same time, Dom also wakes up and they engage in a confrontation while a crowd outside destroys everything around them. Dom and Arthur manage to overpower Saito and question him, during which he claims that he orchestrated all of that to test Dom's team's capabilities, and they failed. It turns out that the entire situation there is also just a dream, and their real bodies are sleeping on a high-speed train, where someone is putting on music with headphones on them, and one of them hears it as a signal. Saito is thrown to the ground and threatened with a gun, but he just laughs, as he realizes that the carpet is different from reality, and concludes that he's still asleep. He is impressed, finding out that he's in a dream within a dream. However, this is a shared dream of one of the team members who's waking up on the train, and Dom wakes up as well, and they separate. Moments later, Saito wakes up, suspicious of what he just dreamed. When Dom arrives at the apartment, the first thing he does is spin his totem, and he calms down when it stops spinning. Meanwhile, his children call missing their father and ask when their mother will return. The man has to remind them that the mother is no longer among them. Arthur arrives for Dom, saying the helicopter is on the roof, and it's time for them to go before Saito finds them. But as they approach the helicopter, they see Saito inside it. The man tested their abilities and offers them to solve an extremely complex task for him, not stealing, but implanting an idea in the subconscious of the right person. He needs Dom to convince Robert Fisher, his competitor's son, to dismantle his father's company. In return, Saito promises to clear Dom of false accusations of killing his wife with just one phone call, so he can legally return to the United States, where his children are. Dom agrees, and the men fly to Paris to find a new architect. He meets with his father, a university professor, who introduces him to a talented young woman named Ariadne. Dom then gives her a task. The girl has to create a maze in 1 minute, and when she succeeds, Dom explains that in a sleep state, a person's brain is capable of literally anything, without limitations. She will create a dream world that his team can bring a person to fill with their subconscious. The girl starts asking questions, and Dom advises her to remember how she got to this cafe, and Ariadne realizes she's in a dream. Suddenly, everything around her starts exploding and flying in different directions, but Dom and Ariadne sit calmly in the middle of this hurricane, while the music plays. The girl wakes up in a rented office where Dom explains that the military invented this dream-sharing program to conduct more realistic training exercises. The brain works much faster in dreams, so 5 minutes in real time is equivalent to an hour in a dream. Ariadne begins to create her first model based on Dom's subconscious and literally folds the city. The two go out to look at what Ariadne has created. The girl skillfully uses various architectural techniques. Suddenly, Dom recognizes the location as a real place, and he tells her that it is strictly forbidden to create it, otherwise a person may lose their sense of reality and get lost in different worlds. The girl begins to get reckless and euphoric, so the characters start attacking Dom because they are projections of the host's subconscious. Then, Mel appears piercing Ariadne, who screams and wakes up in the office. Arthur explains that the only way to exit a dream is by dying, and the girl needs a totem, a small object whose characteristics only she knows, which will serve as a reality signal in the world. Later, Dom goes to India to find the thief impersonator Eames and finds him at a gaming club. Eames confesses that he also conducted experiments on implanting ideas, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. The idea must be as simple as possible so that the subject can easily make it his own. Upon learning about the task ahead, Eames suggests finding out everything about Robert's relationship with his father, whose corporation he's supposed to destroy. But then it's discovered that Dom is being tracked by people from one of the companies he stole from. He tries to get lost in the city's maze, but his pursuers find him and open fire. He is saved from the inevitable fate by the sudden appearance of Saito. Meanwhile, in Paris, Arthur shows Ariadne examples of paradoxical architecture in dreams. Literally anything can be created, for example, infinite stairs of any size. Arthur says that Dom used to build incredible things, but he no longer does so after his wife's death. At the same time, Eames takes Dom to a known pharmacist named Youssef, as they will need to enter the dream on 3 levels, and to ensure that the dream is stable, a special sedative is necessary. The difficulty lies in the fact that because of this medication, one can only exit the dream through a kick. Death won't help. Saito announces that he will also join Dom's team and explains the task. Fisher's company is the last obstacle before his own company reaches the dominant level. Eames requests access to Robert's godfather, Browning. Meanwhile, Robert Fisher meets his father in a terminal state. Eames concludes that on the first level of the dream, he can play the role of Browning and implant the necessary thoughts into the businessman's head. At the same time, Ariadne prepares her own totem, and Dom shares information about his. Mel used to spin the object, and if it didn't fall, then the world wasn't real. He forbids Ariadne from sharing sketches of the maze, otherwise, projections of someone who knows the plan can infiltrate the dream, for example, Mel. But Dom cannot refuse to participate in the operation because only he is familiar with the technique of inception. The team is developing an implementation plan to navigate through 3 levels of sleep. A very powerful sedative is required. Correspondingly, the time increases at each level, 1 week for the first, 6 months for the second, and 10 years for the third. The only way to return from the 3rd level without being through death is through a kick, the sensation of falling that pushes a person out of the dream. Saito has an idea and says that since they need 10 hours with Robert to put the plan into action, he suggests that Robert frequently flies to Australia, and only then can they have the 10 hours they need. So Saito bought an airline, causing the team to board the same flight as Robert. On the plane, Dom talks to Robert and puts a sedative in his glass of water. People fall asleep and find themselves in the middle of a rainy city. They hijack a taxi and go in search of Fisher, and he hails the vehicle. Saito appears and soon holds him at gunpoint. Suddenly, a train appears out of nowhere in the middle of the street, dragging cars. While Dom tries to figure out where it came from, the taxi with the kidnappers is attacked by Fisher's projections, highly trained professionals. A shootout ensues, and Saito is injured. The team manages to take the businessman away, but they find out that Fisher has been trained against dream espionage, and his projections are highly skilled professionals. This time, if someone dies, they won't wake up and will end up in Limbo, an undeveloped area of the subconscious, for an unknown number of years. But the team has no choice but to continue their work. The heroes pretend to be kidnappers trying to extract the code from Fisher's safe, but he doesn't know it. Eames transforms into Browning, who the villains allegedly are torturing, and is placed alongside Fisher. Meanwhile, Saito promises Dom that he will fulfill his promise, no matter what happens, and for that, he will even return from Limbo and become young again. At the same time, Browning tells Robert that there is a new will in his father's safe about the division of the company. Robert admits that his father's last word was one of disappointment. Ariadne demands that Dom finally tell the team the whole truth because by delving into Fisher, they are also delving into Dom, and this means that at any moment something may appear breaking all constructions. Dom admits that he and Mel built their own world, where they lived for almost 50 years, but the day came when he wanted to return to reality, which Mel didn't want. However, they woke up rejuvenated, but Mel convinced herself that that world was unreal, and she needed to wake up, which required her to die. One day, on their wedding anniversary, Dom finds Mel sitting on the windowsill, demanding that he jump with her, otherwise, he would face consequences. For she left a letter accusing him of murder and, despite all his pleas, Mel ends up jumping to her death, believing that this way she would wake up to the real world. Dom had to flee the country, leaving his children behind. The conversation is interrupted by Fisher's projections surrounding the hangar as he screams a random combination of numbers under the kidnapper's demand. Fearing the worst, they put him in a van and drive off. Now they need to enter the second level, and after asking Yusef to drive carefully, everyone sleeps inside the dream. The group finds themselves in a hotel, and Dom introduces himself to Fisher as the head of his security and draws attention to the dream's strangeness, warning him of the danger and that he is there to protect him from invasions into his subconscious. Dom convinces Fisher that the dream kidnapping was orchestrated by Browning and persuades him to enter a dream within a dream with Browning to extract his true motives, thus lowering Fisher's consciousness even more. The team goes to the third level, leaving Arthur behind at the hotel, where he is immediately attacked by projections, so defense is being conducted on 2 levels. Yusef escapes the pursuit on the first level while Arthur defends himself against those who want to destroy the team sleeping in the hotel room on the second level. At one point, Yusef's car flies off a cliff, and Arthur's corridor begins to shift position. The third level of the dream leads the team to the snowy mountains. Saito and Robert go to the vault while the others distract the guards using snowmobiles and all kinds of weapons. Meanwhile, on the second level, Yusef's car falls into a trap on a bridge, and he turns on the music as a signal for the kick. This means the team has only 1 hour left. The kick starts, the car flies off the bridge, gravity disappears in the hotel, and the snow avalanche falls on Yusef and Robert. The last chance to reach the kick is when the van plunges into the water. Saito and Robert arrive at the vault location. Meanwhile, Arthur ties his friends' bodies together and transports them to the elevator. Robert enters the room with the safe when Mel appears behind him and shoots him. Dom ends up shooting her too, and then descends to the location. Ariadne suggests going after Fisher to the lower level, and as Arthur's music plays, they use the defibrillator and create a separate kick. Wounded Saito will delay the guards, as he has very little chance of escaping. Ariadne and Dom move to the next level and find themselves in Limbo, a world built by Mel and Dom. Dom meets Mel, and they talk for a bit. He explains that the idea is like a virus, it takes root in the mind and becomes part of the person. Mel realizes his explanation and suggests that Dom stay with her. Dom admits that he planted the idea in Mel's mind that she needed to die to return home. Upon waking up, Mel couldn't get back the feeling that her world was real and ended up killing herself to return to what she believed was the true reality. Saito dies from his injuries on the third level, and Eames activates the defibrillator on Robert, but Mel refuses to let him leave Limbo. Dom offers to stay with Mel in exchange for Fisher, so Ariadne soon finds him and pushes him off the building, thus returning to the third level. Knowing what they did, Mel attacks Dom with a knife, but Ariadne shoots her. Back in the third level, Fisher meets his father, who says he's disappointed that his son wanted to be him instead of creating his own identity. Robert retrieves his will and his childhood toy from a safe and cries over the bitterness of his loss. This being the simple idea that Dom and his team implanted in Robert's subconscious, so that he can have his own identity and continue his father's company but changing it to wind energy. Explosives detonate on all levels, resulting in a series of events. Ariadne jumps from a balcony into Limbo, the fortress explodes on the third level, Arthur uses explosives to push the elevator on the second level, and the van plunges into the water on the first level. Everyone, except Dom and Saito, returns to the first level of the dream. Dom says goodbye to his wife and to Limbo, remembering that they have already lived a long life and aged together, but it is time to let her go. Yusef's car plunges into the sea, and the rest of the group breathes with oxygen tubes, while Robert and Browning emerge on the surface and then sit on the riverbank. Robert says he decides to continue his father's great company but will do it his own way, innovating the entire segment. Saying this thinking that Browning is beside him, when in fact it is Eames. We go back to the beginning, where Dom, who had stayed on the third level saying he would go fetch Saito, finally arrives there. He finds a very old Saito, as he stayed in Limbo for several decades. Dom, while remembering what he came to do there, also says phrases that only he and Saito knew, reminding him of the promise he made, to help him have the chance to see his children again. Dom then says he came to take him back to reality to become young again. The next second, we see him waking up on the plane, and beside him, Saito also wakes up, thanks to Dom. Where we can see that the whole team at that moment also wakes up on the plane. Saito immediately grabs his phone, and when Dom later goes through passport control to re-enter the United States and finally see his children again, even not knowing if it would work out, to his joy, he is calmly allowed to enter the country. He finally returns home, and the first thing he does is spin his top to see if he's in the real world and not in a dream. But while hugging his children, he forgets to keep watching and doesn't notice that the top is spinning endlessly, leaving a big question in the air: is he really in the real world there?